All right, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. We start on time, end on time, so respect everybody's time. Welcome everybody tonight to the March 2023 Solid program. And tonight we are going to talk about professional pathways and how people got where they are in various professions. So I'm hoping the students will gain from this. What I want to do is everybody to have about 12 minutes of discussion about your specialty, why you chose the specialty that you did, and any insights, certainly about the pathway to get there. How did you become educationally the specialist that you're in? And then after that, I'm going to open it up for questions for the students. So to the students, if you can send questions to Kara Kearns, Kara with a K, she will write those down and be sure everybody gets a chance to get their questions answered. So again, thank you very much for showing up tonight, and happy spring break. I'm going to start out with primary care, because we all know that the center of the universe in medicine all focus around general internal medicine. And so Dr. Rigarelli, you want to just tell me a little bit about you and your process, and I'll turn the microphone over to you. Kara?
Hi. So thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone, the ACOI, all the students, everyone for listening in this evening. My name is Kara Ruggieri. And I've been with the ACOI, I guess, since the time I was a resident. And so I've formed, various relationships with some of you. I know a few of you on, others we haven't quite met in person, but hopefully will at upcoming meetings. So I guess to start, going way back, I took a couple years off before med school and did research, which I know is kind of the standard, it seems like these days, or at least even a second career. My medical school I went to was the University of New England in Maine. And I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so I'm actually coming to you from Pennsylvania. So it's 8 o'clock here, but I'm in the Lehigh Valley at St. Luke's University Hospital in the Lehigh Valley, which I'm at the Bethlehem campus. We have several campuses. And my medical school was University of New England. It was gorgeous up there, quite beautiful. At the time when I entered into medical school, really was an open book. I really enjoyed a lot of different things. I just love science. I loved people. As far as a career, I mean, I had ambitions of all sorts of things. I can't say I knew very much about what was ahead of me. Had a lot of guidance though along the way, which, having mentors and people in your life to help guide you through the process is a tremendous asset. But I can say once I went into my rotations, I think the biggest thing I learned was what I didn't want to do. And I can say wholeheartedly that even up until the match, and it's just, it happens to be match time right now. So, but up until the match, I really still was a bit undecided, despite the fact that I had interviewed in internal medicine, but I was very much, I really liked pediatrics too. And so I entertained doing med peds. However, it just turned out that internal medicine was what I really enjoyed. And I can say that as I went through my rotations as a student, again, I sort of checked off the list things that did not suit me, whether it was my personality or whether it had to do with work-life balance. But I think a big part of that, as Dr. Good, you were doing the introduction, I was thinking about really what sort of set it in motion. And I was just telling my residents and students today about my first experience on my first rotation, which happened to be internal medicine. And although it wasn't the most pleasant experience, it really did sort of shape my future and really piqued my interest in just wanting to know the why things happened and how things connected. And so went obviously off and did a bunch of rotations, changed my mind a million times. I find that to be true with the students that I teach now. And I tell them that's normal and that's natural. But I knew I wasn't going to be a surgeon. I knew that I wasn't really cut out for OBGYN, but pretty much everything else was on the table. And so, as I said, I really explored a lot of different avenues in my rotations and ultimately decided on internal medicine. And the reason I chose that was, again, I really had a big interest in just knowing the why. I really was very unsettled. I can think of being on my emergency medicine rotation. It's a great field, but I just wanted to know what happened to patients. I didn't like that I had to ship off somebody who had, drastically elevated LFTs for no reason. And I really couldn't figure out, what was going to be the cause for that. So that's what really sort of drove me as far as, just wanting to know the why and work things up, but also having a lot of options from that pathway. So I think I know internal medicine provides one with choosing a fellowship, doing general medicine, being a primary care doctor, working obviously in academics. There's just so many possibilities. You could do hands-on procedures. As we all know, there's a lot that you can choose from. And so when I got into my residency, again, it comes down to a lot of mentorship and people who really mentored me and coached me along the way. And of course, many were internists, but of all sorts of backgrounds and training. And that's what got me into academics because my residency, it was at St. Luke's where I work now. But my mentors were strong internists. They really exemplified and showed me, what an internist, how an internist thinks and what is important also outside of your training as far as having work-life balance and what you could do with that. And so pretty early on in my residency, they offered me a position eventually once I graduated. And so I joined on faculty at that time. And I really thought I would end up I explored fellowship quite a few times. I went from cardiology, endocrinology, infectious disease, you name it. I explored a lot of different avenues, but I really just wasn't satisfied with devoting my life to like one field. I really enjoyed seeing a nice variety of patients and having like a different case each floor I went to or each case that I came across. And so it seemed like teaching in academics was really what I was set out to do. And I joined a great faculty, had some great mentors at the time, learned a lot about medical education, obviously took over as the osteopathic program director at the time. There were like strict DO program directors. I am at an ACG and a duly accredited at the time program. And so I really got to see both sides of things, but we're very heavily DO friendly at our hospital system. And so I was able to educate and work in the osteopathic realm of our program and eventually became the program director. And now I am the associate program director for internal medicine, as well as our transitional year program. And I also am in charge of the osteopathic recognition program, which we've had for quite a while. And so that has been very satisfying, not just, from a professional stance, but also personally. Being a female and, I was married in med school and had my first child in residency, had 2 children since then. And now I have 2 teenagers and a 7-year-old. And so I was able to really balance the flexible lifestyle, having time for my family. That's a huge importance to me. And I'm in charge of our wellness program here at our residency program for GME. So I really get to try to not just mirror that, but to challenge myself with trying to maintain wellness and help residents build their emotional intelligence and understanding of, their place in the residency, but also how they need to carve out time for themselves. So I think, that's one piece of advice I have for trainees. is just making sure that they set goals, like SMART goals for themselves, but also carving out time and having time to do the things they love with the people that they love. Because really, if you don't have that, it's a tough road no matter what you do, but particularly in medicine. So I'm not sure if I addressed everything or if I just kind of blabbered on, but hopefully that was helpful and a little introduction into who I am and what my role is here at my institution.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure we'll have some questions later, and we'll move on to nephrology and Dr. Mark Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin, you're on. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you. I'm Mark Baldwin. I've been a part of ACOI since a long time, dating back to the last millennium. Some of you, we go back a long way. And I was always attracted early on to internal medicine. I had some really, really outstanding mentors. And my background was in college, was in biochemistry. And I always was kind of a biochem physiology geek. And I liked the fact that the internist could come up with the answer and explain why the patient got sick. That really I enjoyed it so much. I went to Chicago. I went to the Kansas City school. Carol, good to see you, fellow Kansas Cityan. I did my internship and residency in Chicago at the old Chicago Osteopathic Hospital, where I met Dr. Raj. We go back a long way. And when I started my residency, I wanted to be, back up for a minute. After my internship, I got called up to active duty with the Navy for 3 years. So I spent a year in Spain, which was great. War was really hell over there. I didn't want to come back to the States, but I did my last 2 years as an ER doctor at Great Lakes Naval Hospital, and then went back to COH to do my residency. I started my residency wanting to be a cardiologist. They had a huge program there. I got along well with the cardiologist, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't, for lack of better terms, it just wasn't geeky enough for me. The stuff I was interested in, most of the cardiologists could care less about. And I had a phenomenal mentor at Chicago Osteopathic, Gary Slick. Gary got me into nephrology, but equally importantly, he got me into education because at COH, a lot of big teaching centers, the residents were the first line of education when you were on the floor service. And I really enjoyed that. I went on to Loyola University to do my fellowship, and then was in Columbus, Ohio for 21 years in private practice. Right after I got there, I started, a friend of mine was down at the West Virginia school and got me to help develop the renal curriculum. And I taught that for 15 years. And I always served as preceptors and was always had my hand in education. And at a point after 20 some plus years of working, I was kind of looking to get more into academics. I had always done teaching on the side. And that's how we ended up coming out here north of Seattle in a town called Mount Vernon. They had a new IM residency up there. I was there for 3 years, helped that get going. And then for the last 5+ years, I've been here at Pacific Northwest, where I'm the chair of internal medicine. The thing I liked about nephrology was a lot of the reasons I became an internist. I still consider myself a general internist, and to be a nephrologist, you have to understand all the different organs that kidney disease affect, which is pretty much everything. And I like being that kind of super internist. I like the complexity of my patients. I like longitudinal illnesses. I like in, very challenging clinical problems in that. That's really what I still get excited doing that, although I'm not doing it as much as I did. So I really got, if I had to do over again, I would do the same thing. I've found nephrology to be fascinating. Plus, there is a big shortage of nephrologists in the United States. As we know, obesity-related illness and climate change have increased the rates of kidney disease. We have not kept up with the number of nephrologists we've been putting out. ACOI and the American Society of Nephrology are involved in a program to kind of help foster that relationship. But I enjoy the close contact with patients. I remember when I was in training, I would call one of my attendings up at 2 a.m. and say, Mr. So-and-so is in, and they would give them their entire life history. And I thought, man, these guys are so smart. No, we end up seeing our patients every week. So we really kind of become their country doctor of sorts. And again, I enjoy that part of nephrology too. Plus, there's a lot of interesting cutting edge things that keep coming out in the area of kidney disease and in the greater scheme of things. And cardiorenal medicine's a really big area too. So if you want to do research, if you want to do private practice or group practice, there are plenty of opportunities. If I'm not mistaken, I heard this from a pretty good source, that majority of department chairs at medical schools are nephrologists. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I heard that a while back. So that's nephrology in a nutshell. So.
Thanks, Dr. Baldwin. We'll move on to Dr. Callahan here in critical care. Patrick, you're on.
Well, thank you for letting me come join you tonight. I think that because tomorrow's St. Patty's Day, I figure that's why I got the invite. So I'm going to take this in a little different direction. I trained at Midwestern, so I'm a gangster from Chicago. I live in San Antonio. I have lived all over the country working and training and a variety of things. I did a dual residency, internal medicine and emergency medicine, and then went on to critical care. And you can get my email and we can set up a time offline if you actually want to hear about that, about the career. But I don't actually think that's why you joined this call. I actually think what you're trying to figure out is what are some things you should be thinking about. Yes, your specialty is important, but more importantly, is the specialty that you choose going to give you the life that you thought? And so I'm going to take this in a subtly different direction, which is my personality is obsessive compulsive. I want to know everything about everything. And that was why I went into internal medicine and emergency medicine. And I really thought I was going to be an ER doc, but I wanted the medicine side because I loved information. Every rotation I did, I could picture myself being an OB doc. I could picture myself being a peds. And when you start moving through nephrology, Dr. Slick was my residency director, love him to death, smart as could be. And the reason I kind of frame it that way is because the truth is medicine, the study of medicine has been wonderful. The practice of medicine has been very hard. We go through different periods in our life. I started medical school a little late. I was in the Marine Corps enlisted, started medical school at 26, got out at 30, 5-year residency, 2-year fellowship. And the reason I say that is because at that time I was single and I was able to really focus on me. If I worked an 80-hour week, it didn't matter. I went home, I slept, I got up, I studied, that was fine. But I wanted to eventually get married and have kids, and I did later in life. And everybody thinks or knows that doctors work long hours, that they work, especially in emergency medicine, critical care, where it's shift work to some extent, that we work 50% nights, weekends, holidays. But you really don't understand the impact to your family until you get into it. And I think that as you go through your career, what you're going to start to see is some of the things you really enjoyed about whatever you chose maybe isn't fitting your life as you move on. And so I'm going to break this down in a really simple way. The things to think about, but also remember, unless you die young, you're going to age. And the energy I have now at 52 isn't the same energy I had at 26. I used to be able to get by on 2 hours of sleep and run it day in and day out. Now I need a little bit more. So with that said, I'm going to break this down real quick. It's simple. Do you like continuity of care or do you not? Is that relationship that you have with patients important to you? Because a lot of the jobs, critical care, there isn't a relationship that gets built. The ER as a general rule, unless they're frequent flyers, and then you may not want that relationship. That, right? So you have to ask yourself, is continuity of care important? And will that tie you, unless you do some concierge style medicine, will that tie you into insurance companies? And how are you engaging patients? And are you being forced to see patients at $10 an hour, and yet you're expected to spend 45 minutes with that patient? There's a whole variety of things. And I'm not asking you to know about economics, but continuity of care versus not, shift work versus not shift work, hospital-based versus clinic. Hospital-based was what I grew up on. That's what I really enjoyed. I liked that energy. Well, if you work inside a hospital now, your boss is the CEO of that hospital. It's not you. You think you're in control because you're the physician, but in many ways, that contract that you have with that hospital is now always under threat. And with the change in medicine, and that's really the expression, I would say, the way that medicine is being performed, some of that autonomy, some of that, what you really got into, you were driven to take care of patients, you're being told that you need to do it differently. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't good for the patients, and you have to come up with that decision. And then ask yourself, and I'm not asking you to judge, but how important is money? What kind of lifestyle do you want? How many hours are you willing to work for the lifestyle? If that's important, then you have to consider, what does that particular profession drive? I love academics. I love teaching. It's part of my soul. And so I work as a neurosurgical intensivist, and I teach residents and fellows at the university, but I work private at another hospital because I really enjoy the high-end critical care in a wide base. I work in multiple ERs, from high-end stroke level all the way to small little hospitals where you're the only one, and if somebody's sick, you got to figure out how to transfer them out after you stabilize them. So I'm going to tell you, there's more to your decision about what field to go into than just what do you enjoy. And I would ask you to really be honest with yourself about what drives you. Is it partly money? Is it security? Once you're in the hole, 200, 300,000, and you say, well, I'm going to change careers, it's hard to unbury yourself from that financial debt. So I guess the other thing I would say to you is, no matter what you choose, underspend, oversave, and give yourself the flexibility to move about. I work for an insurance company. I do medical legal work. I work at a university hospital. I work at a private. I work in the emergency room. I have about 8 different jobs, and I'm fortunate to be part of ACOI, where I get to sit on their educational committee, look over research papers, manuscript reviews, and then I lecture. And that's what keeps me driven. That's what makes me whole. But and the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to be done, which is, don't believe that there's balance in medicine. There's not. Nobody has it. Everybody pretends it. I've got balance. Maybe I've got balance this week. I don't have balance overall. Sometimes it leans towards your family. Sometimes it leans towards work. You shouldn't have to search for balance. What you should search for is happiness and fulfillment. Balance will be out of whack sometimes, and then you figure out how to recenter yourself. But so if you have questions, if you really want to talk nuts and bolts about critical care or the emergency room or internal medicine, please email me. We'll set up a call and I'll talk with you. But I think that there's more to figuring out what you want to do than what do you like. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate your time and your comments. Last but not least is Dr. Jack Bragg. Dr. Bragg, who is a gastroenterologist.
Thank you,
You're
Bob.
on.
Patrick, you're the only other former U.S. Marine besides myself I've ever met that's a DO. So maybe there's 2 of us in the profession.
Hoorah.
I started out, I went to Kirksville to osteopathic college, and from there did a rotating internship and spent 3 years in family practice because I had a public health scholarship I had to fulfill, and I fulfilled it in a small town in southern Missouri, but realized fairly quickly that family practice wasn't where I wanted to spend the rest of my career. I wanted to do medicine that was more like hospital medicine, seriously ill people and so forth. So I debated about several different things and ended up choosing medicine and went back to Kirksville and did a medicine residency, and then to Detroit and did a 2-year GI fellowship at Botsford Hospital, and then back to Kirksville to teach and practice after that. And right now I am on the faculty at the University of Missouri in Columbia. It's an allopathic school, although there are more DOs on the faculty all the time, and there are several DOs in our residency class. So there's more of us around all the time. They tend to like DOs, at least at my institution, because they work hard, they are smart, and they make good residents. And so at least here, if you're a good worker and you demonstrate that you have a genuine interest in the institution, it's not too hard to get accepted into one of our programs. Surgery's been kind of the last nut to be cracked by DOs, but we've had a DO urologist and DO attendings in general surgery and DO surgery residents. So even surgery is accepting DOs at this point. But I've been in both private practice and academics. While I was at Kirksville, I was pretty much in private practice, although we trained residents and I taught up there, but we didn't work for the school. We worked as a private practice group. And I work for the university down here, and there are differences between academics and private practice. In private practice, you're your own boss. If you want to take off, you take off. If you want to get a piece of equipment, you just get it. If you don't like somebody that works in the office because they aren't doing a good job, you can fire them if you want to. But none of those apply in academics. You don't have much control over your budget or who works for you, but you also don't have to worry about making payroll as an academic physician. Somebody else's problem is making payroll. I personally kind of like academics. You will make less money in academics, but I enjoy the teaching part of it. I enjoy I don't do much research myself. I've got my name on several papers, but that was just because I was in advisory capacity to the people that were doing the project. I told the dean when I came here, I said, look, I'm a DO. I'm trained to see patients and teach. I don't know the first thing about research. He said, that's okay, because we're looking for people that will see patients. That's probably how I got the job here. They were looking for people that would see patients, not necessarily researchers. But you've heard a lot of good wisdom, a lot of good advice tonight from the various members of the panel, and I would echo, I think, almost all of it. But I think if your mind is set on a specialty or a subspecialty, try to spend some time in a hospital where you want to do that particular fellowship. Get to know the people if it's GI, get to know the people in GI or cardiology or whatever it is you want to do, and get their endorsement for your for doing a fellowship at their institution. You'll be further ahead. Even going through the match, it's helpful if you do that. I could tell you a lot more about the day of a gastroenterologist. It's involves mostly the endoscopy lab, clinic, and if you're on the hospital service, doing consults, but it's different at every institution. The other thing I would say is the key to a successful career, in my mind, whether you're in family practice, internal medicine, primary care, GI, cardiology, whatever the case may be, have good partners. If you have good partners that you can leave the hospital Friday night and leave your patients in their care and not worry about them until Monday morning, you will last a lot longer than if you don't have good partners and you're trying to do it all yourself, or just you and one other individual. Have good partners that you can get plenty of time off with, and life will be much simpler. Your spouse will be happier, you'll be happier, and your patients will be better off. That's all the advice I've got, I think, Bob, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's comments. At this point, if you have questions, please shy them over to Kara and through the chat room, or you can just raise your hand or jump in, because we have 45 people on the call, or 44 people on the call. So feel free to jump in. I want to ask a question to, well, it is National Nephrology Month, so I'm going to point to Dr. Baldwin. And Jack kind of mentioned, getting into if you're interested in the fellowship, trying to get involved with that program. Do you recommend that if you're looking for an internal medicine residency and you have an interest in nephrology, that you should go to a program where there is a nephrology fellowship, or does that matter as people are being evaluated?
It depends upon your interest. If you want to do either way, you're going to be prepared to do a nephrology fellowship if you do 3 years of internal medicine. My personal bias, and again, it's just how I was trained, I liked big medical centers where we had a high volume, high acuity of illness. And at times it was kind of like the two Marines here. I was a medic in the Army first time around when I got drafted, and then went back in as a Navy medical officer, and I was assigned to a CB battalion. So I took care of a few Marines. But with nephrology, if you go into a academic center, you really get kind of prepped up. But at this point, though, you could go either way.
Okay. Any of the other panelists have any comments about that?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of thoughts on that. So
Sure.
I think one of the downfalls that individuals have is the expression, and yes, it's bad, inbred. You stay where you start medical school, you go to residency, you do your fellowship, and you don't get any additional input, outside thought. Now, yeah, even these large academic institutions become very incestuous. They just keep producing the same people who stay within the system, and there's a slowing of growth. It's by nature. You respect the people that are training you. You like the way that they've shown you, and you replicate it. And so I personally think that it is superior to go to different programs. So I guess if you're really trying to get into some elite special program, and the best way to do it is to go through their medicine side, I guess I understand it. But I really think you're better off doing an internal medicine in one place and a fellowship in another. So that's just a general thought. And just remember, every knife has two edges. So what I would say about these large academic institutions, the variety, the acuity, you're not going to see anything better. And if you really take advantage of it, you are going to see things that you may never see again in your career. You may not remember them either, but that's a whole different discussion. But at the same time, that means that a lot of the things that you see, you're not going to actually get to manage. You're going to hand it off to another specialist in another team. And yeah, you'll get to watch them. You'll get to maybe ask some questions. When I went to LSU in Shreveport, it was a first year and a second year fellow. That's it. I was on call, and this was right around the restriction time that got ignored. I was on call 320 days my first year. I was on call 270 or 280 my second year. So you can either be the wheel or you can be the cog. I was the wheel because there was only two of us. And we cannulated for ECMO. We ran the ECMO program as a medicine fellow. We ran CRT. We did the plasma exchange for sepsis. And so I got, now a lot of the specialists on this board are probably looking at me like, what? Why were you doing that? Because we in the hospital, nobody wanted to do more work. They were getting paid a salary. It was academic. And so we took over anything that we could to educate ourselves. And so you can either be the cog or you can be the wheel. And so the bigger the program is, the more of a cog you are. And the smaller the program, maybe the more you actually get to do. My 2 cents.
I would agree with that. I definitely can say at our institution, like when I trained there, it was, we did a lot, like in the ICU, we were the ones doing the procedures as far as internal medicine residents go. That was, that was great. Sometimes like you just worked a lot, but you got to see a lot. You got to see and take care of the patients with a reasonably sized team. But then as our institution grew, which, I definitely am in favor of, but GME has really grown so much. So we have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of residents or I should say students now, a different variety of students, which has been interesting. And they're all attracted to the fellowships that we have now. However, I do see our teams are a lot bigger. I don't get to, from a teaching standpoint, I get to, and I make a point to give a lot of attention to everyone, but it's a lot harder now because my teams are bigger. Residents who like and want to go into fellowship do find that they have a lot of opportunities when it comes to research, collaboration, working with some subspecialists, even in the specialist field. So it's very exciting in that sense. But the other side of that coin has been, from a GME standpoint, we have struggled to balance out all the trainees and all of the experiences everyone needs, from residents, students, advanced practitioners. We have a lot of these learners and trainees. And so that has been more of the challenge. We now have the opportunities, the experiences, the research, but now we have different challenges. And so as far as the fellowships, of course, I've not done a fellowship myself, but I definitely get to mentor and coach residents through the process. I think it maybe depends on the fellowship too. Some are just by nature a little more competitive than others. But I don't think you necessarily have to go to a program as far as internal medicine to, it helps your chances slightly. But I know that our fellowship directors, they don't always take people from our program. You still have to be a good qualified candidate, a strong internist. And there are options, like we allow residents to go out of house so that you could do some types of rotations in other institutions. And so that's something as a student you can look into too. Does the program allow you to do some out of house rotations?
Kara, in your, let's go back to general residency, since you are a director. What are some of the green flags, some of the people you look for to add to your residency program? What do you look for? Yeah.
It's kind of general, but we always talk about this as a faculty. It's overall fit. I mean, some might think, oh, they're looking for board scores, or they're looking for, my GPA, which is hard to find anymore in a transcript anyway. So forget that. Now if USMLE and Comlex is still a number score, that's a whole other conversation. But really, can I talk to this person? We like to implement, and I encourage all of the students on to look into, if you haven't heard of it, called behavioral interviewing. And these are types of questions that you might get asked. I mean, this is not unique to the field of medicine, but where we might ask questions more about scenarios and how would you handle a certain type of situation? Should you be put into that situation? Or more importantly, how did you handle such a situation before? So that, like, by example, what kind of person is this? How do they make decisions? We ask questions about how you learn best. What do you struggle with? What has been something that's, I like to ask questions about, what are some of your goals? And so anyway, we get that fit sort of thing from the interview, and that's why that's so crucial. And then of course, we do want to have a strong residency. So academics is important, but do we have residents in our program who have failed? We have failed, meaning boards, or failed something on their CV or their transcript. Absolutely. But that doesn't, so if that's somebody on the call right now, you're worried about that, maybe there was a class you had to repeat. Really, a good program will look at the whole picture. I can say we do that at our institution. We like diversity. We want to see, people who are going to encourage one another and work off of each other's skills. And that makes for the best residency, I think, as far as collaboration and, being successful and being happy where you are. And that's what's most important.
How important is a interview rotation in your location?
A rotation,
Yeah.
it's nice. It's nice, but it
Not
doesn't,
essential.
it's
Not
not,
essential.
it's not essential. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Dr. Bragg, you have interviewed a number of students and residents over the years. What's your comments concerning what do you look for in a resident or fellow?
I think I have different criteria than my allopathic colleagues. They always check the publication list and see how much research a fellow has done and all of those type of things, as well as the board scores and that type of thing as well. But what I tell them is, what I'm most interested in, board scores are important. I want to make sure somebody's graduated from medical school, but what's more important to me is this an individual that I can have a good time with at 2 a.m. in the ICU scoping an acute GI bleed? If you can't get along with somebody, or your personalities clash, it doesn't matter how smart they are or how smart you are. It's got to be somebody who will fit in with the people that are already there. So, and I think Kara kind of alluded to that, but that's more important to me than just about anything else.
Okay. Next question, I'm going to direct to Patrick. How important is research in getting into residency programs?
Wow. So having not been a researcher, and I ended up going to Midwestern, where I went to medical school, so I went against my own advice, right? But in my defense, EMIM was at the time, there was probably 6 or 7 across the country total, and Midwestern had the largest, I think it was the largest program to there was one program in California that I think was larger, but we were huge, and it was a well-established program. So I will tell you that I did not have research. It was not important to get in. I think what you have to do is figure out if research is important for the residency you're going to. It is going to be a research heavy type of training program. And if you're going to a place, and osteopaths as a general rule are workers. I was just talking to a cardiologist the other day, and I said, I'm a blue collar worker. I work in the ER, I work in the ICUs, I'm helping roll patients, I'm getting blood all over me. I'm a blue collar guy. And and not all physicians are blue collar guys. Some of them are wearing suits and ties to work, and that's okay. There's different roles. So if you go to a program that values that work ethic, that blue collar mold, then you're going to work. That's what they're looking for. And if you go to a place that's academic heavy, then that's what they're going to be looking for. And maybe you win and lose in different ways. I do wish that I had had more of an academic role model that could have helped me with research. I've got some publications, predominantly abstracts, and then I got into some large industry trials as a PI, but I did not get the academic exposure that I really wished I had had. So I don't know if that answers what you
Okay.
asked or not.
I'm going to follow up a question about military trained internal medicine residents doing civilian fellowships. Is there any barriers there for that to occur? And I'll direct that to Patrick.
Well, that's fascinating that you asked that. So first off, I was enlisted. So I was just a simple jarhead, got out of my 4 years of prison time, and then went back to college and medical school and yada, yada. But when I was a surgical intensivist in DC at Washington Hospital Center, we trained a tremendous amount of military internal medicine, emergency medicine, both residents and fellows. They would come over. And so I did actually get to, I was one of their mentors. And so I did get to hear, and I got the impression just through the years talking to them that the biggest hurdle was being authorized to do a fellowship, right? So they have to have slots for you. And then your willingness to buy that extra time back as a give back after you go train. So I don't necessarily think that there's a hindrance from a residency side. We never discriminated about whether we were taking somebody that was in the military or not. I was in DC and we had a lot of exposure. So I'm guessing that a lot of programs that are used to them will feel comfortable, and programs that aren't used to them may be a little apprehensive trying to figure out where that individual fits into the program.
Okay. Mark, do you have any comments along those
Yeah.
lines?
I had done, like I'd mentioned before, after my internship, I got called up to active duty. After my first year, when we were deployed, I could have gotten into a residency, but I wanted to go back to Chicago, if not COH, one of the other programs in Chicago, because I like Chicago. And I wasn't that interested, but they were pretty open to DOs. When I was, on a personal note, when I was an enlisted man, I was assigned to Walter Reed. This is back in the early 70s. And that was the first place I ever worked with DOs. I did not know what a DO was. And I got to know about 3 or 4 of the interns that were DOs. And I thought, oh, these guys are okay. So when I went to apply to medical school, I started looking at DO programs, and it's like, yeah, I can, if I want to specialize, I can do that. So when I was in as an enlisted man, that was during the draft. So we had, it was a different type of medical corps than when I was in. And now we've had 2 wars we've been in. And I write a lot of letters of recommendations for our students going into military programs. And our students have no problem matching in military programs. So for what my anecdotal experience is worth.
Okay, thank you. So I got a hot question here for Kara, and that is, you mentioned during your residency you had a baby, and so I only have one faculty member here that's going to relate to having a baby during residency, and that would be you. So if you could kind of talk a little bit about what students might experience as they go through their training and developing a family.
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everyone. Guys too, of course. I have a couple residents right now, you know, guys that just had their wives just had babies, or I know personally, it was, you know, it's something as other people had alluded to, something that was important to me. It just happened to be during residency. And again, I was a lot younger, so you have more energy, and it's kind of like you just have to do it. And I do remember putting in central lines, you know, 8 months pregnant in the ICU, and just that before we had duty hour, like big duty hour restrictions like we have now. And I just did it. And you know, but I had a great supportive group of people, and starting with my program director. I mean, that really sets the tone, right? So strong, supportive, understanding, a very family friendly, and it still is today, group of individuals that work with us. I really, I mean, I think the hardest part it was definitely after, and the lack of sleep, which you're used to, but it's a different kind of exhaustion. I think other people probably know what I mean. So, and so it was that, but it was also trying to, because then I had gone into my 3rd year, and just knowing that, you know, I had to sit for my boards, and I had to work on like less sleep, even when I wasn't on call. And so that was sort of like the wake up call, like, oh, wow, this is real. But of course, I would not exchange that for anything in the world. My son is now 15, and you know, I feel like my kids, they get to see me go out and work and do this job as a physician. And, you know, it really makes me proud to be able to do that. But as I went on, and my other son was right after becoming an attending, and then my daughter was a few years after that. It didn't get easier, but I think it's just because, again, you just get older, and in a way you get used to sort of having children, but it's definitely challenging. But I definitely, you know, I don't regret anything. I just wish my kids slept better when they were younger. That was my biggest struggle, was that. And I could go on and on. I will definitely leave my email address for anybody. I know it is a sensitive topic, as far as like, it's not really encouraged to talk about that during interviews. But I have to say, sometimes it does come up, and I'm open to discussing that with anybody. So
Are there any restrictions or delays or other issues that a pregnant resident might encounter during the program?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how much time you take. Now, though, thankfully, the ACGME does have a new, I don't know what you would really call it, but allowance, where you get 6 weeks of time, no matter what the family obligation or personal obligation it is, where you will still, you know, meet criteria for the residency. And it's a new thing that just started this July. So, so that is something that, you know, it really does allow for that. There really shouldn't be, I mean, there of course could be restrictions for people based on their health needs, but, you know, I guess it just kind of depends. It depends on what your program, you know, has put out for you and how supportive they are. But I can say, as a whole, ACGME and any program that falls under them, which is everyone now, have certain criteria that they follow. And there's really, you know, I think the residents that we have had that have gone through that, they've been fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
right.
Can I ask a question on that? That's interesting. So are you saying that if you are an ACGME accredited program, that by definition they have built into, let's just say it's a 3-year track, they have built in there 6 weeks of potential usage?
Yep.
And so in many ways, that's a question that could be not asked on an interview. If you know that they're ACGME accredited, then you know by definition there are 6 weeks of family time built in without needing to extend your residency.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's a new kind of thing this year. So all programs have to offer that. So that is, yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I phrased it that way to help the medical students,
Mhm.
because there are ways to get the information you want to know without necessarily asking a question that you don't want said.
Good point. Right, right.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying that. And that's exactly the type of information I was looking for. So I wanted the last couple of minutes left here. I want to go through each of you and just talk a little bit about years of fellowship. So Mark, I'll start with you. And just for clarification purposes, you did a 3-year internal medicine residency and you did a 2-year fellowship in nephrology. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had I'm of the age when you did a 1-year rotating internship. So I had 4 postgraduate. When I started my fellowship, I started as a PG 5.
Yeah.
And I did 2.5 years. The nephrology fellowship has sub fellowships. You can do a year and do transplant. You can do critical care. You can go to one of the big centers, say University of North Carolina, and do a glomerulonephritis sub fellowship. But those are more in pretty heavy academic tracks.
Sure.
So it's generally 2 years and then plus however much you want to add on to do additional research.
Okay. Jack, you want to talk about GI? You did an internal medicine residency, again, probably 3 years to what the students would be today. I think at least all of us probably did 4 years at the time, but you did 3 years essentially, and then 2-year fellowship in GI, which I want to discuss that a little bit more.
I'm old enough that my fellowship in GI was 2 years, but they're all 3 years now. Some of them have, in the 3rd year, you get exposure to advanced endoscopy, but most of them are general GI for all 3 years. And then if you want to do advanced endoscopy, and I'm talking about ERCPs and single lens enteroscopy and ultrasound of the GI tract, then you do another year of a special advanced fellowship to do those things. The other thing,
inflammatory bowel would fit in that same category,
yes,
or hepatology,
hepatology, nutrition. Nutrition's usually just a few months somewhere with a nutritionist, but yeah, there are some advanced GI programs like that you can do.
Okay. And Patrick, for critical care purposes, base internal medicine residency, you coupled that with a emergency medicine, and then critical care. Kind of explain how you did your sub fellowship.
So a lot of times what you choose is what you get exposed to in terms of your mentors and the location you're at. And the smartest doctors in my hospital were internal medicine and emergency medicine. I did a 1 year. I didn't want to get left behind by the older, more seasoned gentleman on the panel, but I did a 1 year rotating internship with an emergency medicine focus. I did 4 more years on top of that with my EMIM rotating. So every 3 months I changed. So that was 5. At the time, I went into critical care through internal medicine because there was not an emergency medicine track.
Right.
So I ended up doing 2 years additionally that was actually tied into my internal medicine. Now emergency medicine offers it. So you could just do a straight ER and then go into critical care. And I'm gonna say 2 quick things, which is I never wanted to be in a clinic, and I surely did not want to be a pulmonologist. I would have been a nephrologist before. I love nephrology, absolutely loved it. Smart guys, seriously, they really are. Rheumatologists and nephrologists are 2 of the smartest specialties. A really good hepatologist gives them a run for their money too. With that said, I never wanted to be a pulmonologist, and so I did not do a 3-year program. I wanted to dedicate to critical care. But if I could go back and do it again, I probably would have added on the extra year, because there are a lot of doors that unfortunately are closed if you're not pulmonary. So I'll just say that as a general. Don't forget there are fellowships under ER besides critical care. There's hyperbarics. poison control, that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to make one more statement like I made at the very beginning, which is this is about me. I'm just giving you thoughts, ways that you structure your career to fit you. But every year you give on the front end is a year you take away from your back end earnings. So I gave 7 years, and those are 7 of the lowest paying years. And I'm never going to recoup those 7 years. If I did that time in 4, then that's 3 more years I would have had at the higher end salary later in my career. And I hate to say it that way, but here we are in 2023. I graduated in 2000, and I'm still paying student loans. So there's a huge financial investment and the interest that goes into it and the whole bit. And these are just other elements that you have to think about just beyond whatever career you're going into and what specialty and where are you going to go. There's so many parts to it. Don't sell yourself short. Look big picture.
Well, I want to thank the entire panel. This has been very informative and I hope useful for the students. It kind of gives some thought as to what pathways you all went down. I want to thank you all for attending tonight.